to get a single book, we don't have to use book objects all and then a certain index. Instead, we can use book objects get. And this gets us one single data entry if it finds one. Now we therefore need to pass in some criteria, some condition to get. A key value pair for the attributes we set up here that identifies the book. For example, we could use ID free. ID is a field we haven't set here, but it is added automatically as I explained earlier, and it's an auto-incrementing number. So if I run this, we see that it looks like Harry Potter 1 currently has ID free. ID 2 would be Lord of the Rings. ID 1 doesn't exist anymore because that was Harry Potter before I deleted it. Those IDs are then not reassigned. ID 1 is forever gone. So we can use the ID, but we can also use another field, like for example title, and then we can look for my story, which was my book. And you see I successfully got it. We can, of course, also, for example, get a book where the rating is 5 and I get Harry Potter. Though it is worth pointing out that get will always just get exactly one data entry, even if your criteria here would match multiple entries. Now, for us here, that's not the case. If I have a look at all, we see that all the field values we have are unique, but for example, for is best-selling, that would not be the case. So if I get a book here where is best-selling is true, I actually get an error because it actually would have found multiple objects that fulfill this condition here. So that's something to be aware of. When you use get to get a single value, you should really use some condition that really only matches one field. And of course, the ID is a perfect condition, therefore, using the ID, because that is guaranteed to be unique. If you use some other value like the title, you should know that it is unique if you want to avoid errors like this. But that's then a more convenient way of getting a single data entry. It's simply a way where you don't have to memorize the position of that entry in the database. But of course, sometimes you don't know if there is just one entry. Instead, you want to get all entries that fulfill a certain condition. And that's something you can also do. With book objects, filter. Filter is basically like get. It also wants named parameters that identify entries by their attribute names here. But filter, unlike get, can return multiple results. So if I, for example, filter by is best-selling true here, I get a query set, a list of all the items where is best-selling is true, which in this case is Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. If I filter for false, I get those results. We can also filter for multiple things. I can filter for is best-selling false and rating equal to 2. And now I only get my story, because for some random book the rating was 1. So filter, therefore, is very useful when it comes to retrieving a list of values. Now, of course, you don't always want to filter for equality, though. Maybe you want to get all books where the rating is lower than 3. Now, for that, you can't say rating smaller 3. This might seem like it should work, but it won't, because this is invalid Python syntax. Don't forget, you're still writing Python code. And what we're doing here between those parentheses is we're passing in values for parameters. And this is an invalid parameter assignment. Instead, to do something like this, Django gives us special names we can use, special parameter names. Besides checking for equality with the attribute names themselves, you can always append certain modifiers to those attribute names. With underscore underscore, and then, for example, LT for lower than, or LTE for lower than or equal. And then you assign the value with an equal sign for which it should be lower than or equal. And the same for just lower than. You use an equal sign to now say, I want to filter for all the books where the rating is lower than 3. And if we hit enter, we get these 2 books which fulfill the criteria. And if you wonder how you should know all those modifiers, of course the official docs help with that. If you search for Django filter, you should find this Making Queries article. And there you can learn all about that in great depth. Of course, I'll cover the majority in this course here. But there you then also will find those field lookups, as they're called. There you are then forwarded to the field lookup reference. And in there you now get all those lookups which you can add after the double underscores after the attribute name. To, for example, search for things like greater than or equal, lower than or equal, and so on. So that's where you can learn more about that and where you can find a complete list of all the supported modifiers, as I like to call them. Of course, we're also going to see a couple of them throughout this course. You can, of course, also have multiple fields like this. We can search for books where the rating is lower than 3, but where then, for example, the title contains something, which we can do with contains, with the contains modifier. And we could say the title should contain story, and therefore only my story is found. One important word about contains, though, by default, it's case sensitive. That means if we would look for story with a lowercase s, it would not find my story, except for that here it does. The reason for that can be found in the official Django docs. If you're using SQLite, which we are, there is no case sensitivity check. So there contains doesn't care about the casing, and hence it does work like iContains, which otherwise would be your alternative modifier if you're working with a database where the case matters with contains. Then you could use iContains to tell the database that your casing should not matter, so that even when searching with a lowercase s, it should find my story. For SQLite, this does not matter. You don't need to use iContains there. You can, but you don't have to, because contains by default ignores casing. But that's specific to SQLite. Overall, this is how you can use filter and get to find whatever you're searching for. To find specific items with certain conditions, you can add one condition or more conditions, and you can mix and match this how you want. Now, I still want to dig a bit deeper into filter and querying though, because there is more we should be aware of here.